He's getting hit by a much slower fighter. And wait a minute!
The biggest fraud check in boxing history, folks, right here, front and center. And it's so ridiculous, it makes you wonder if anyone was even trying to cover it up. In all the decades of bloody bouts and broken noses, the world has never seen a blunder quite like this one. And let me tell you, the authorities barely lifted a finger to do a thing about it. And yeah, that brings us to Ben Whittaker, the so-called rising star who managed to snag himself a hot accusation of fraud and cheating right at the beginning of his career.
If he can't, and it looks like he's going to give it an effort there, he will go to the judges' scorecards.
I mean, Ben, if you didn't have it in you to throw a real punch, what on earth possessed you to step into the most punishing sport around? Now his career's dangling by a thread, and you're not going to believe the mess that got him there. Stick around, because this story's one for the books.
Like a failure, and I'm constantly trying to avenge that disappointment. Not a lot of people would say that about a silver medal in the Olympics.
Again, just shows the ambition that he has, that he believes that he is the very, very best. They both threw right hands there, both landed, and that just prompted Whittaker just to up the pace a little bit.
That's nice. Beat your defense.
Trying to find his range is Whittaker.
So, October 2024 rolls around, and here we go. The big Whittaker versus Cameron showdown. This should have been a walk in the park, right? Whittaker, the golden boy of British boxing, was marketed like some untouchable superstar, destined to make everyone else look like they'd wandered into the wrong sport. The fans were pumped, already crowning him the next big thing. But what happened? Well, it was less of a glorious bout and more of a live-action comedy sketch. Whittaker found himself tangled up in an absolute mess in the ring, almost like he forgot how to fight midway.
Common with Bitterbiev, neither one of them has been knocked out, even though he's lost 6 times.
At one point, he got into such a ridiculous clinch with Cameron that they looked ready to topple right out of the ring. Yeah, so much for the future of boxing there. Fans were watching this train wreck, jaws on the floor, as the supposed prodigy floundered like a rookie against an opponent who had zero intention of backing down.
Tricks that are working for him, not quite working here tonight, and Cameron showing that experience of not just management there at distance, but also just building.
So, let's break down this absurd scoring debacle in the Whittaker versus Cameron fight, shall we? The organizers had the nerve to only count the first 4 rounds, as if they thought no one would notice them blatantly handing Whittaker a free pass and ripping a well-deserved win away from Cameron. Why ignore the 5th round, you ask? Oh, simple. Because that's when Cameron was at his absolute peak, throwing punches like he'd been training his whole life just for this moment. He was all precision and defense, while Whittaker was, well, let's just say, floundering would be kind. But did they give Cameron his rightful TKO? Nope. Instead, they erased the whole 5th round, let Whittaker hobble off with a nice little draw, and left Cameron with a victory snatched right out of his hands.
Give Whittaker as much time as possible to continue. If he can't, and it looks like he's going to give it an effort there.
Now, the excuse for this nonsense, they say it was based on an injury, conveniently Whittaker's, of course, scoring only the first 4 rounds where Whittaker didn't look like he'd stumbled into the ring by accident was basically handing him a lifeline and a way out of actually taking a loss. Ignoring that crucial 5th round gave Whittaker's team all they needed to call him competitive, like he hadn't just been practically outboxed. Fans saw the scorecards come up as a draw, with Cameron's dominance wiped out in one sweep, and it was infuriating. Cameron put in the work, fought his heart out, only to have his moment in the spotlight shoved aside so the golden boy could keep his shiny record intact.
Look, I will say Ben Whittaker was looking out of sorts before this happened.
And speaking of golden boys, let's talk about the full-on favoritism that was slapping fans in the face here. This wasn't a close call, this was a daylight robbery. Like the officials thought nobody would catch on to their little sleight of hand. They gave Whittaker an escape route and slapped a draw on it instead of the loss he'd earned. To the fans, this wasn't a tough decision gone wrong. This was a slapstick attempt to keep Whittaker safe from his own mess, turning what should have been an obvious L into a sneaky little draw.
Maybe Whittaker looking for a way out of this.
That's a valid question, I can say, but you can see the way they went over, the way they were locked up with the arm.
What does this draw mean for boxing? Well, it's more than just a tarnished fight record. Fans are ticked off because boxing is supposed to be about who's got the skill, the grit, the heart to win. But when the powers that be pull a stunt like this, everyone's left wondering if the sport's just playing favorites. The backlash was immediate, with social media blowing up and fans calling out the shameless favoritism that seemed like a business move, not a sports decision. Whittaker's nice, neat record wasn't the only thing that took a hit here. This whole fiasco made the sport itself look rigged, leaving fans who tuned in for a real fight feeling completely duped.
Fine. We can pause, come back to it. Sorry.
But let's rewind a bit. How did Whittaker end up in this bubble-wrapped career where he's protected from taking an honest-to-goodness loss? To get that, you've got to go back to the beginning, where Whittaker's star-studded path to glory was paved with glitter and hype. Whittaker first made waves as an amateur, even snagging a silver medal at the Tokyo Olympics in 2021. But oh, that wasn't enough for him. He called it a loss and refused to wear the medal, using the drama to launch himself into the pros. From there, the hype train left the station, with everyone pushing him as the next big thing, boxing's next golden boy.
I got kicked out of school, like I said, for the ADHD. I wasn't like a naughty kid, but if it was quiet, I had to do something. I had to make people laugh or something like that. There was like little situations where I couldn't read the best, so to stop the embarrassment, I'd mess around.
Of course, when I say his career was carefully curated, I mean, they pretty much set him up with hand-picked opponents who were more there to keep his record squeaky clean than to give him any real challenge. Whittaker's early career was packed with fighters who posed about as much threat as a light breeze, ensuring his record stayed spotless. He put on a good show, sure, throwing some flashy hooks, dodging for the cameras, pulling off moves that looked great for the highlight reel. But was it real skill, or just a carefully planned performance? Critics started whispering that Whittaker wasn't all that his career was a house of cards, built on easy wins and viral moments, rather than any real depth in the ring.
All he asked for was to turn up and put 100% in, and he actually gave me my first pair of gloves. He was my dad's coach as well, and then I got my dad on board. He's the strict one of the team. You know, he still thinks I'm a little baby.
Whittaker's footwork, or lack of it, was a whole red flag show during that October fight. Instead of moving with purpose, he threw himself around with excessive head movement, as if he could dodge punches by sheer will. But here's the thing, head movement without solid footwork. It's like a bike with no brakes. Every time Whittaker leaned back to dodge, his head just hung out there, practically begging Cameron to go for the counter. It was messy. It was amateur hour.
Right hand from Cameron.
That's the exact shot he's called it for. To his right.
Working out, boys, come on.
And that day, Whittaker limps out of the ring, looking every bit like a guy who'd just gotten a thorough whooping. Common sense says Cameron wins by TKO, right? Makes perfect sense to everyone, except the officials, apparently, because instead of acknowledging the obvious, they cooked up a little plot twist for us. They decided to just skip counting the 5th round altogether, which, conveniently, was Cameron's best round, the one where he was clearly handing Whittaker a reality check. They tossed out the usual TKO rule, ignored that last round like it never happened, and, wait for it, called it a draw.
Where's the movement, guys, from Whittaker?
See, sometimes it's hard to get out of a pattern of a fight.
Whittaker was toast, barely standing, shuffling off as if he'd just survived a full 10 rounds with a heavyweight. Rules simple. Cameron should have walked out with a win, but because it's Whittaker, they just decided to throw those rules out the window. They ignored the 5th round entirely, zeroed in on the first 4 rounds where Whittaker didn't look like he was getting totally bulldozed. And bam, a draw. So what do you think? Fraud? Baloney? Or maybe just a series of unfortunate events for poor old Whittaker? Let's be real. If you've got your wits about you, you already know the answer. answer. But hey, I still want to hear what you've got to say. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe, and let's keep calling out the nonsense together.